Welcome to my brand new Python course. In this course you will learn everything you need to know and getting started with Python. This is the first video and today we will see the introduction to Python and we will also going to install Python and set up the environment. But before we go ahead, please give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for all the upcoming videos. Now let's get started. First of all, let's see the introduction of Python. So Python is the most popular programming language in the world. It is also the most easiest programming language to learn, and also the salary of Python developer is much higher than any other language developer. With Python you can do pretty much anything from web development and software development to machine learning, data science and AI. And if you had not written any code in your life, then this is the best time for you to start your programming journey with Python. So this was a short introduction to Python. I hope it didn't bore you a lot. Now let's see how to install Python and set up the environment for coding. So for this you need two things: Python itself and a code editor to write your code. So let's open your favorite browser and let's search Python install. Click the first link and it will take you to python.org. Go to downloads and click on the download button. It will download the latest and stable version of Python for your operating system. Once the download finishes, just go to the download location and just double click the installer. Here make sure to check mark the option which says add Python to path. After that just install Python. So once Python is installed, next you need a code editor. So for this you have many options. You can go for Visual Studio Code, but I will install PyCharm because it is officially made for Python and also it is very easy to work with. So once again let's open the browser and this time let's search for PyCharm install. Click the first link and it will take you to the official website of PyCharm. There just download the community version of PyCharm which is absolutely free. Once the download finishes, just go to the download location and double click on the installer and proceed with the installation steps. Now you have your coding environment for Python is ready, so we can write our very first program in Python. So for that just open PyCharm, and if you have installed PyCharm for the first time you will see this screen. Just click on new project and here name your project. I will name it Python Mastery and make sure to check on this option which says create main.py. After that click on create. Now here let's remove everything that is provided to us by default and let's write our very first hello world program. So for that let's write print and inside this just write hello world in between quotes. So we have written our very first program in Python that will print hello world on the console. So let's run our program by clicking on the run button at the top right corner of our screen, and there you go, it says hello world. Now before ending this video I want you to make some changes in the editor window as well as in the console window so that our code looks a little bit nicer and clean. So for this just click on file, setting, editor and font and just increase the font size a little bit. I will increase it a little bit more just for the sake of this video so that you can see it better. Now for the font family let's choose this one, so it is perfect for the editor's font size and font family. Now let's also edit the console tab as well. So for that just go to color scheme and there you will find options for console font and console colors. First of all let's change the console font and I will also make it a little bit larger, and for the font family I will set this one. And after that let's also change the console colors. So for the output color let's change it to dark blue and for the other let's make them appear dull. After that let's click on apply and OK. So that's it. Now it looks a little bit better and clean. So that's it for this video. We have learned the introduction to Python and also we have installed Python and written our very first program in it. In this video we will learn about variables and data types in Python. But before we start start, please give this video a thumbs up and also be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you never miss our future videos. Now let's get started. Variables are basically containers to hold some data, whereas data type tells you about the type of data a variable stores. For example, let's create a variable called as name and let's put hello world inside that. So here name is a variable that holds the data of string data type, and we can now print this variable using our print statement. And note that this variable is now reusable, which means that we can use name anywhere in our program. And also note that the value of a variable can be changed. So if I change the variable as my name, and now if I print my program, then you can see now it prints my name as output. Now that you understand about variables and data types in Python, let's talk about some of the most common data types in Python. And these are string, integer, float and boolean. Let's practice each of them with an example. As we already know how to write strings in Python, but let's check the type of our name variable to clear all the doubts. So let's write type, and inside that let's pass our name variable, and it will now print the type of our variable, and there you go, it prints class equal to str, which is short for string, which means name is a variable with string data type because we have assigned it a string value. Similarly, let's practice integers. So let's declare an age variable, and this time let's initialize it with number because integers can be positive and negative numbers. So I will assign my age variable 20 because I am 20 years old, and let's print age and also the type of it. So there you go, it has printed my age and also it shows the type of it. So there you go, it has printed my age and also it shows the type of it as int, which is short for integer. Now let's practice floats. So float refers to the data that contains some decimal places after a number. So think about a variable that can be used as float. Well, I can store my height using float variable. So let's write height variable and let's assign it 5.8 centimeter. But we will omit cm because it is not allowed. And once again I will print the height and type of it on the console, which is float this time. And finally let's practice booleans. So boolean variables can only have two values, either true or false. Let's write a boolean variable called is raining and let's assign it to false. You can write true as well, and once again I will print the variable along with its type. And there you go, it is a boolean variable which has been confirmed by our type method. So guys, these were some of the most commonly used data types in Python. I hope you understand each of them. Now before ending this video, I want to tell you that in Python, if you want to comment a piece of code, we need to use hashtag symbol, just like I did now. Commenting is just used for developer convenience and it is totally ignored by the Python interpreter. So once you made a line into comment, then it is totally ignored and would not run. Also, I want to show you how you can use multiple assignment in Python. And with this trick, you can write as many variables as you can in just one line. So for that, let's write name of our variable spreaded with commas, and on the right side of equal to sign, we need to assign them their values, keeping the sequence and order in mind. And with this trick, you can now declare as many variables as you can in just one line. And of course, you can print and use them as well. So that's it for this video. We have learned about variables and data types in Python. Now let's go ahead and learn about typecasting and how to take input from users in Python. So first of all, let's see how to take input from a user in Python. So to take an input in Python, we use an input method. It is a built-in method for taking user inputs in Python. So let's write input and let's say enter your name. And let's store what the user enters inside a variable called as name. And let's print your name is plus the name variable we have. So here note that input method always returns a string, and in Python we can use string concatenation where we can add two strings with plus sign just like we did here. So let's run our program, and there you go, we have a message as enter your name. So I can write my name, press enter, and there you go, it says your name is Masood. Now let's take the age of user as well using another input method, and this time let's ask for enter your age. And once again let's store the result inside an age variable, and let's print the age as well after the name. like UR plus whatever we get in age variable. And after that, let's write years old. Let's run our program once again, and there you go. Once I write my name and age, it has printed your name is Masood and you are 20 years old. So this is how you can use input method to get the user inputs in Python. Now let's learn about typecasting. So for this, let's demonstrate another example. Let's try to get two numbers from user using our input method, and let's try to add them. So there you go, we are getting different results because as I already mentioned that input method always returns a string. So with string concatenation, the whole thing become a string and the values could not be added. So to fix this issue, we can use typecasting where we need to convert the numbers to an integer before we actually add them. So I will directly wrap my input methods with int because I want to convert them to integers so that I can perform addition on them, and they will now return an integer values. And in order to check whether they have been converted to integers, I can use type method, and once I run my program, you can clearly see now my numbers are of type integers. Finally, we need to print the results as the sum of two numbers is plus the sum of two numbers. So I will create this sum variable up here and assign the result of addition of these two numbers inside this. And finally I will pass sum inside print function, but still it will throw an error because we cannot concate a string with an integer. So to fix this issue, we will convert the sum back to string using typecasting, and now it will perfectly work without any errors and we will get our sum. So I hope it makes sense, and in this way you can cast any variable to a different data type based on the situation of your needs. So that's it, we have learned how to take input from user, and also we have learned about typecasting in Python. Now let's talk about strings and some of its important methods in Python. So as we know from the first video that string is a data type in Python. String is basically a sequence of characters and we can use indexes to print the part of a string. For example, let's say I write a string called CodeWithMasood. It will be stored in a memory like this, and if we want a particular part from the string, we can use indexing. So let's write curly brackets after the name of my string variable and let's write 0 inside that. So in programming, indexing always starts from 0, so it will return the first character. And here you go, it has printed C on the console. Now if you want a part of a string or few characters from your string, you can use string slicing. So a string slicing is very easy in terms of indexing. Actually you can pass 3 values inside your curly brackets to perform slicing in strings. And these values are called start, stop and step. If I write a start of 0 and stop of 4, and note that in between them we use colon. Now this means that it will print all the characters starting from 0th index all the way up to 4th index, but it will ignore the 4th one. So in this case it will print C, which is on 0th index up to the characters E, because after that we have W on the 4th index, which will be ignored. And if I run the program, it will print the word code on the console. And finally we have third value for step, which is used to jump over some characters. The default value is 1. So for example, if I want to jump by 2 characters and let's increase the stop index to 10, so what do you think will be printed? So yes, it will ignore every second character and print the string from 0th index to 10th index as output. Let's run our program and there you go, it has printed some weird word from my channel's name. But I hope you understand how slicing works with string. Finally, you can also use negative indexes, which means that it will just count from opposite side and everything else remains the same. And you can also leave some values empty by just writing colon instead of them. For example, if I write 0 and colon, it means that print the characters from 0th index all the way up to the end of the string. So this is how string slicing works in Python. Now let's look at some other methods that strings have. We have len method, which will simply return the length of your string. So it will count the number of characters in a string. We have count method, which will count the total number of occurrence of any character, and you can use count method by typing the name of your string followed by dot and the count method. And inside this, let's pass C, and there you go, it has printed 1 because C is present only one time in the entire string. Moving forward, we have capitalize method, which will capitalize the string, Next we have find method which will provide the position or index of a given character. Let's pass D here and there you go, it has given us the position of D. And finally we have replace method which is used to replace a word in a string. So let's replace code with programming and let's run our program. So there you go, now our new name becomes programming with Masood. So guys, this was the concept of strings in Python. Now let's learn about lists and some of its useful methods in Python. Lists in Python are containers to store a set of values of any data type. Let's create a list of fruits and note that lists in Python are represented by square brackets. And let's write the names of few fruits. So I will write banana, apple, mango and orange. So this is now a list of strings. Of course you can mix up the data types, like you can also store integers, booleans as well to your list, but as this is the list of fruits, so it doesn't make any sense. Now a list can also be indexed just like a string. It means that I can print the element at position 0 of my list and it will print banana. And also we can use slicing with lists as well. For example, if I want to print the first two elements of my list, I can use the second value which is stop and I will set it equal to 2. Now it will print the element on 0th index and 1, so it will return banana and apple on the console. So now you understand how lists work in Python. Now let's look at some important methods of lists in Python. We have sort method which will sort the list in ascending order. So for this example, let's create a list of numbers and let's put in some random numbers inside that. Now let's apply sort method to this list, and as lists are mutable in Python, therefore it will make the original list into a sorted list. So I can print my list and let's run our program. So there you go, the list has been changed to a sorted list. So moving forward, we have reverse method which will just reverse the list. Next we have append method which is used to append some data at the end of our list. So let's append 5 to our list and there you go, now we have our list printed with 5 at the end. Next we have insert method through which we can insert a particular value at the specified index. So on index 2 let's add 5 and let's run our program. So there you go, on index 2 we have now 5 and everything else has been pushed to the right. So next we have pop method. It is used to delete an element from the end of our list. And finally we have remove method which will remove an element from the list. So let's remove 8 from our list and there you go, we have no more 8 in our list. So this was the concept of lists in Python. Always remember that lists are used to store multiple items in a single variable. So guys, that's it. We have learned how lists work in Python. A tuple is an immutable data type in Python, which means that it cannot be changed once defined. For example, let's create a tuple of students and let's pass in the names of some students as John, Carter and Peter. And note that tuples uses round braces and each element inside a tuple is separated with comma. Now let's print the students on the console and there you go, our tuple has been printed with all the values. Now as I told you that tuple is not mutable, therefore it doesn't have a lot of methods available just like we have in lists. Because lists in Python are mutable and we can manipulate and alter the list, but in case of tuples we can't. So tuples has only a few methods available just like count and index. So let's look at count first. So this will return number of times an element is present in our tuple. So let's pass in Peter and there you go, it shows us 1 because we have only one Peter inside the tuple. Now let's look at index method. So it also takes in the name of an element and return the index of that element present inside the tuple. Let's pass in Peter again and there you go, now this time it has printed the position of our Peter. And note that we cannot append, delete or manipulate the tuples, but the only additional thing we can do with tuples is that we can use indexing and we can iterate tuples using loops. Lists can also be iterable, but we will look at this in our future videos when we will talk about loops. For now, just remember that tuples are immutable data type in Python that cannot be changed once defined. Dictionary is a collection of key value pairs. It is unordered and mutable data type in Python. It means that we can manipulate and alter dictionaries very easily. For example, let's create a dictionary of student and we need to write curly brackets to denote dictionaries in Python. And as we know that dictionary is a set of key value pairs, therefore we need to mention key and its value. So a student has name, so I will set it to, let's say, John. A student has also marks, so let's say we have an array of marks. So yes, you can write the value of any data type. In this case we are using array. So I will write random marks of few subjects, and also a student has address. I will simply write USA, and that's all. We have defined our first dictionary, that is called student. Now to print dictionary we need to use one of the method that dictionary has, and it is called items. So I will write the name of my dictionary dot, and let's write the name of our method, which is items. So now let's run our program, and there you go, it has printed the list of key value pairs that are inside a tuple. Now if you want to print only the keys in your dictionary, then you can use the method called keys, and it will return a list of keys in your dictionary. Now if you want to update your dictionary, then you can use update method. So let's say I want to update name. So let's write dictionary with key as name, and let's assign it a new name. After that, let's print the original dictionary. Now as I told you earlier that dictionaries in Python are mutable, so it means that it will directly affect our original dictionary and make changes to it. Let's run our program, and there you go, now our name is equal to the new name that we have passed in. And finally we have our get method, which is used to print the value corresponding to given key. So let's put name inside our get method, and there you go, it has printed the value of our name. Now you can also iterate dictionaries using loops, but again we have not yet covered loops in Python, therefore we will talk about that in upcoming videos. For now, just remember how dictionaries work in Python, and please try to create as many dictionaries as possible with mixed data types, and practice each topic that we are covering, because always remember that practice is the key in coding. In Python, set is a collection of non-repetitive elements. It means that in sets, no repetition of values is allowed. Just like lists, sets are also mutable. For example, let's create a set of numbers, and note that sets are created using curly brackets. Now for the values, let's place some random numbers inside. So this is now a set that holds some integer values. Now let's look at some of the methods available in sets. So we have len method, which will simply return the length of our set. Let's print it on the console. So as you can see that it has printed the length of our set. Now let's see remove method, which will simply take an element and removes it from the set. So let's pass in 5 and let's print our set. So there you go, we have no more 5 in the set. Then we have clear method, which will simply make our set empty. Now let's look at the most important methods of set, which includes union and intersection. So first of all, let's see union. For this, let's create another set with some values, and let's use our union method between these two sets. And let's print the resulting set on the console, which will simply return a new set. So there you go, it has printed a big set with both of the sets combined. And note that duplicate values are removed. So this is what union is all about. It combines the two sets but then remove the duplicate values. Now let's look at intersection method, and writing this is just similar to union, just we need to change the name to intersection, and let's look at the result. So now as you can see, it has returned a new set, which is fine because union does the same, but here it doesn't combine the two sets, but instead it only picked up the values that were same or common in both of these sets. And this is what intersection is all about. First of all, let's look at if statement. For example, let's create a boolean variable called is raining, and let's set its value to true. Now let's use our if statement, which takes in the condition, and let's pass is raining variable inside that. And now inside the if statement, let's print it is raining. So now we have written if statement that works like this. If raining, then it will print it is raining. Otherwise, it will just came out of the if statement. In our case, as the condition is true, thus it will print it is raining on the console. And note that we can write as many statements as we want inside the if statement. Now let's look at if else statement, which is same as if statement but with the addition of else block, which means that now if the condition is false, then the statements inside the else block will be executed. So let's print it is not raining inside else statement, and let's also change the value of our variable to false. And let's run our program. So there you go, it has printed it is not raining because the condition is false and hence the else part is executed. So I hope you understand how the if else statement works in Python. Now moving forward, let's see how elif statement works in Python. So it is same as if else but with the addition of else if block. And note that you can write as many elif blocks as you want. Let's change our variable to some day, let's say Wednesday, and now let's use our elif statement to print the day we have in the day variable. So I will simply copy paste the code. Now let's see how it works. So if the day is equal to Monday, then it will print it is Monday. If the day is equal to Tuesday, it will print it is Tuesday, and so on until it reaches else part. Now it will reach the else part only if none of the conditions above matches, and if it does, then it will print invalid input. So let's run our program, and there you go, it has printed it is Wednesday because this is the only condition that is matched. I hope it makes sense. And also note that we have used indentation or spacing in conditional statements, and this is important. Don't just forget it. So this was all about conditional statements in Python. I hope you would be thinking why loops are used and what is the purpose of loops in programming. The answer is pretty simple. If you want to print huge number of data, then you need loops. Let's imagine you want to print counting from 1 to 100. So if you use variables, then it may take you hours in declaring a lot of variables, or you can say that you need to declare 100 variables for that. It is very boring, time taking and tedious. So to avoid these tasks, we use loops. I hope it makes sense. Now let's see loops in action. So first of all, let's see for loop, and let's print counting from 1 to 100 using it. So let's write for in range, and let's pass in 1 to 101 inside range because it will then print numbers from 1 to 100. And let's print I. After that, let's run our program. And there you go, how easily we have printed counting from 1 to 100. So this is the advantage of loops in programming. Now let's see while loop, and this time let's print numbers from 1 to 100 using while loop. So first of all, let's define a variable as I equal to 1. After that, let's use while loop with condition as I less than or equal to 100, and inside the while loop I will print my variable which is I, and after that let's write I equal to I plus 1. So that's it, we have written our program, and let's run it. So there you go, it has printed numbers from 1 to 100. Now let's see how it works. So first of all, I has value of 1, and then we have put our condition inside while loop, and note that the while loop will run again and again until the condition becomes false. So hence it will print numbers from 1 to 100. And the line where we have written I equal to I plus 1 will just increment our variable by 1 on each iteration. And this is how we get numbers from 1 to 100. So I hope you understand how while loop works in Python. Now you can also practice loops with lists, tuples, dictionaries and sets. I will show you how you can use loops with lists and dictionaries, and with sets and tuples you can practice by your own. Okay, so let's create a list of some random numbers, and let's print our list with the help of for loop. So let's write for number in and the name of our list. So in this case we have list of numbers, and let's print our number using print function. Let's run our program, and there you go, all the numbers in our list has been printed on the console. So each element inside our list has been stored inside our number variable, and on each iteration we are printing that number, which ultimately result in printing all the numbers in the list. Now let's see how to use loops with dictionaries. So for this, let's create a dictionary. So I will create a dictionary of student, and let's say student has a name called Masood. Similarly, let's say student has a GPA of 3.5, and let's say student has subject of computer science. Now this is a dictionary, and if you want to print the values inside your dictionary, then we can use for loop. So let's write for student data in students, and now you have certain methods to print dictionary. So let's first of all try items, and inside the for loop let's print student data. So it will print the data, and it will consider each key value pair as a tuple. Now if you want to get only the values or keys, then you can use other methods. First of all, let's print only the values, so everything else will remain the same, just we need to replace items with values. Now as you can see that it prints only the values from our dictionary. Similarly, if you want to print only the keys from your dictionary, then you can use keys instead of values, and it will only print the keys from the dictionary. I hope you understand everything that is related to loops in Python. A function is a group of statements that is used to perform a specific task. In programming, functions play an important role. A function can be reused. For example, let's create a function called as display, and inside this function let's print hello, I am a function. Please call me. And this is now a function with a single statement. Note that in Python, functions are defined using def keyword. Now to execute this function we need to call this. So let's write the name of our function with round braces at the end, and this is how you call a function. Now let's run our program, and there you go, the function has been executed once. Now in order to execute this function multiple times, we just need to call this function again and again. And if I call this function 3 times, it will print hello, I am a function, please call me 3 times. So this is very simple form of function. Now let's see how to create a function that will accept two numbers as parameters, and it will print their sum on the console. So let's create a function called as sum, and let's assume that it will accept two parameters as num1 and num2, and inside this function I will print their sum. Now let's call this function by passing those two numbers. So I will pass 2 and 5, and let's run our program. So there you go, it has printed 7 on the console. So this was how you can pass values as argument to the function, and this is how a function will accept those arguments as parameters, and then how you can use those parameters inside your function to perform some operations. Now let's look at the final version of functions where a function can return something. So let's make changes to the existing function by returning the sum of two numbers instead of printing the result. And this is how you can use return with functions, and note that a function can always return a single thing. And now in order to get the result that is returned from the function, we need to store it inside a variable. So this is how it works. First of all, when we call a function, it will return the result, and we are storing that result inside our result variable. And now if I print the result variable, I will get my output. So this was the concept of functions in Python. We have learned the basics of function, then we understood functions with arguments, and finally we have learned functions with return type. In Python, if you want to store data permanently, then you can use files. Python has many functions through which you can easily talk to a file by reading its content or by writing content to it. In this video, I will be showing you the 3 ways in which you can talk to file. Number 1, writing into files. Number 2, reading from files. And number 3, appending data to existing file. And here with append method, we can easily add data without rewriting the file. So let's jump right into it. First of all, let's see how to write into files. So for this, we need to create a file first. And for that we have open method in Python that takes in 2 arguments. First of all, it takes the name of file to which you want to work with, and secondly it takes the method or mode. So for the name I will simply pass test.txt because it will be a simple text file, and if I do not mention a complete path like C and name of folder etc., then it will create the file in the current directory. And for the mode I will pass W, which means that we are performing write operation, and then I will store this entire thing inside a variable, and let's name it file. Now in order to write into files we need to call the write method, and I will simply write hello I am a file created using Python inside that. And finally, as we have finished writing, so let's close the file, and that's it, we have written our code for writing into files. Let's run our program, and there you go, it has been executed without any errors, which means that our file has been created successfully, and there you go, in the current directory we have this test.txt file created with the text that we have inserted using write method. So it is amazing, and I hope you understand how to write into files using Python. Now let's understand how to read data from files. So I will show you how to read data from the current file that we have just created. For this all you have to do is to replace the write method with read, and we don't need to write anything inside the read method. So let's remove all the code inside our read method, and finally let's store whatever we get from the read method using a variable, and I will name it as text, and also just replace W with R, which will activate the reading mode. Finally let's print the text on the console. Let's run our program, and there you go, it has printed the data on the console that is present inside our test.txt file. It is a simple way of reading from files in Python. Now finally let's see how to append data to files. Let's use the same file again, and this time I want to append data at the end of the text inside this file, because if you use write method then it will overwrite the existing file by removing all its content, and we don't want that. So for this we have append method, and also we need to change the mode to A, which stands for append, and I want to append the text as amazing at the end. Let's run our program once again, and there you go, we have no errors. It means that we have successfully appended our message, and yes, we did it. So this was how you can very easily work with files in Python. Welcome back guys. In this tutorial we will learn about modules in Python. So a module is basically a file containing code which can be imported and used inside another module. And note that in Python every file is a module. So to demonstrate this, let's create a file called module.py, and inside this file let's create a function called as display, which will print hello I am a function defined inside another module. Now inside our main.py file let's call this function, but to access any function from another module we need to import the module first. So first of all let's import module at the top, and now let's use this module to access the display function. Let's run our program, and there you go, we have hello I am a function defined inside another module has been printed on the console. And this is how we can create modules in Python. We can define anything inside a module, and then we can import and use it inside another module. For example, we can define classes, functions, variables, etc. And now I hope you understand how these built-in modules in Python work. So I want you to practice modules with as many variables and functions, and trust me guys, this is the best way to master any language. Up till now we have discussed procedural programming, or more specifically functional programming, but from this video onwards we will be looking at object-oriented programming, which is one of the most popular approach in programming. And in this tutorial we will see what are classes and objects in Python, and how we can write classes and objects. A class is a blueprint for creating objects. For example, animal is a class, whereas dog, cat and tiger are all its objects. Similarly, we have car a class, and BMW, Ferrari and Lamborghini is its objects. So remember that a class is just a blueprint for creating objects. Now let's create a student class. So I will write class student, and note that class is made up of two things, and that are variables and methods. So let's define a variable called name. So let's say John, and also let's create one more variable for storing the GPA, and let's set it equal to 3.5. So we have defined two variables inside our student class. Now let's create some methods. So I will create a method called display, which is used to display student name and GPA on the console. So now this is a class of student which contains two variables and one method. Now let's create an object of our student class, because without an object a class is nothing. So I will create an object called std and set it equal to our class. So now std is an object, and we can use this object to call any methods and variables of this class. So let's call the display method, and here note that the self keyword is automatically passed to this function. It is nothing but just refer to the current object. In this case it refers to std. I hope it makes sense. Now let's run our program, and there you go, it has printed the student name and GPA on the console. Now you can reuse this class to create as many objects as possible. Let's create another object called as std1, and let's print the display method once again, but this time using our std1 object. So there you go, now we have printed the records of two students, but both of them as same data. So I hope you understand how classes and objects work in Python. In the next video we will see how to create objects of our class that will consist of unique data belongs to each student. A constructor in Python is a special type of function that is used to initialize the variables of a class. Constructor get called whenever we create an object of a class. Let's demonstrate constructor with the help of an example. Let's create a student class, and note that in the previous video we have created the same class of student, but we have initialized the variables in the class itself. But this time I would create a constructor for that. So a constructor is defined as def init and round braces at the end, just like we create our regular functions, but with the addition of this special name which is init . Now a constructor also contains self parameter just like functions, but this time the self parameter is used to call our class variables, and we can assign them a value by passing some parameters in the constructor. So let's say this class will have variables like name and GPA. So I will pass both of them as parameter inside our constructor function next to self, and let's use this self keyword as self.name equal to the name that we have passed in the constructor. And similarly let's write self.gpa equal to GPA. So this is now a constructor which is used to initialize the class variables that are name and GPA to our constructor parameters. Now in order to print the details of our student, we want to define a new method. So I will call it display data, and inside this function let's print the student name and GPA. Now our class has been completed. So now it's time to create the object of our class. But as we have used constructor, which means that now we can call the constructor method to initialize our variables for each object. So let's create our first student object. I will call it John, and let's assign it our student class. Now here John is an object of our student class, and as I have used constructor inside this class, which means that now I can pass name and GPA using my student class constructor. So let's pass in the name as John, and for the GPA let's pass in 3.5. And note that the self argument is passed by default. Now what will happen is that as soon as the object is created, the constructor will get called and both of our class variables will be initialized. And now if I print the display data function, it will print the record of John. So this is how we can use constructor in object-oriented programming. Now if I want to create another student, I can easily do it in just a single line of code. Let's create a new student as Masood, and let's pass in the name and GPA inside the constructor, and also let's print the display data for this student as well. Let's run our program, and there you go, now it has printed the record of two students. So with the help of constructor you can print the record of as many students as you want. So this was a short video on constructor. Inheritance is a very real world scenario in programming. Inheritance means creating new classes from an existing class. For example, let's create a class called as animal, and inside that let's create our variables and methods. I will create some methods. For now, let's say an animal can walk as well as an animal can eat. So I will create eat and walk methods. Now this class is having two methods. So let's say animal is the superclass or parent class. Now if you want to see inheritance, then let's create another class. Let's say I will create a dog class, and let's say the dog class will inherit the animal class properties. So let's put animal class between round braces after our dog class, which means that now dog is the child class and animal becomes the parent class. So a child class can inherit any methods and variables from the parent class and can also consist of its own method and variables. So let's say the dog class have a variable called as color, and let's set it equal to brown because I like brown dogs. Now we need to create the object of our child class. In this case it is dog class, and let's call the color variable using the dog class object. Let's run our program, and there you go, it has printed brown on the console. But what if I try to access eat and walk methods that are defined in animal class directly from my child class? So let's see, and there you go, it has printed I can walk and I can eat as well. So this is due to inheritance, because a child can always inherit from its parent class. It can have its own methods and variables as well. So I hope you understand at least the basic concept of inheritance in Python. Exception handling in Python is used to handle the errors. For example, let's say you have a code that might throw an error, but at the same time you don't want to break your program. So in this case you can use exception handling. Let's consider an example. So let's create a program that will simply divide a number by 0. So this will of course throw an error because a number cannot be divided by 0. If I run my program, and there you go, it has got an error or exception for 0 division error, which means that I can use this exception to throw an error manually without breaking my program. So for that we will use try and except blocks in our program. You need to put the code that might throw an error inside a try block, and to catch the error you can use except block, which will get the exception. So I will give it an alias name of e, and let's print the error using print function. You can write anything, but for this example I will write number cannot be divided by 0, or I can also simply print my exception on the console. And there you go, now you can print your own errors and also you can handle them very easily. Now there is a finally block that is used to execute a piece of code irrespective of the exception. The finally block will always be executed. So let's write I will always execute, and let's run our program. So there you go, first of all the error is printed, and after that our code inside the finally block has been executed. And note that you can use the name of exceptions as well if you are sure, and also you can write as many except blocks as you want to handle multiple exceptions. So this was all about basic concept of exception handling in Python. List comprehension in Python is the shortest way of creating a list which is based on the list that is already existed. For example, let's create a list of random numbers, and now let's create another list that is based on this list with the help of list comprehension. So I will create a list called as updated list, and inside this list we need to write our code to generate elements that will follow a specific syntax. So first of all you need to write the name of a variable which will hold the data, and after that you can call a for loop, and finally you can write some conditions. So let's write I as the name of my variable, and let's iterate the list using for loop. I will write for I in numbers, and let's put the condition as if I is greater than 5. So we have written our code and let's now print our updated list and let's run our program. So there you go, we have list of numbers printed that uses the list of numbers and it consists of numbers that are greater than 5. So I hope you understand how list comprehension works in Python, and I suggest you to practice list comprehension with as many examples as possible, and this will definitely improve your coding in Python. Lambda functions in Python are very similar to functions but are written using fewer lines of code. The syntax of a lambda function is like we have our lambda keyword and after that on the left hand side of the column you have your arguments and on the right hand side you have your expression. Now the expression here means you can code any function body here. So I hope it makes sense. Now let's demonstrate it with the help of some practical examples. So let's write a code that will print the square of a number using lambda function. So let's write lambda and for the argument I will write x, and then we need to write colon, and for the expression as I want square so I will write x multiplied by x, and finally I will assign this entire thing to a new variable. Let's call this square variable and pass some number in order to calculate its square. I will pass 5. Let's run our program and there you go, it has printed the square of 5 on the console. So how does it work? First of all, when we call square and passed 5, this 5 has been stored into our x variable and then the expression on the right hand side has been evaluated and returned the square of our number to this square variable. And finally when the square variable has been called, it has printed the square on the console. I hope you understand how lambda functions work in Python. Now let's create another program that will return the sum of two numbers using lambda function. So this time we need two arguments. I will call them a and b and the expression will be changed to a plus b. And finally let's change the square to sum and let's call our sum variable by passing 4 and 5 inside. Let's run our program and there you go, now it has printed the sum of two numbers. So this is how you can use lambda functions and pass more than one argument. Now I want you to practice lambda functions with as many examples as possible, and this is the best way to learn code. So a format function in Python is used to play with strings. For example, let's create a string as my name is Masood and let's actually print the string using our print function. Now if I want to write my name dynamically using a variable, I will simply create a new variable called name and pass my name inside that, and then down here I can use my variable using plus operator, or you can say using string concatenation, and with this now I can print the statement correctly. But what if I show you another and very easy way to do this? So for that we will be using format method. I will simply write format after my string using a dot sign because as I told you earlier that format is basically a string function. So now I can write my variable inside that, and here instead of my name I will simply put empty set of brackets, which means that now my name variable will be stored in this position. Let's run our program once again and there you go, it still prints the same output because this time using a new and more powerful method of string. Now with this approach you can mix up and write as many variables as you want without any string concatenation and also without any typecasting issues. For example, let's create another variable for storing my age, and again inside the format function I will write the age variable, and finally inside the string after my name I will write and I am empty brackets years old. So let's run it once again and there you go, now it prints the complete statement. So it is amazing. And how it works? Well, the first value goes instead of the first bracket and the second value goes instead of the second bracket, and so on. This was all about the basic concept of string formatting in Python. Now that you have learned the basics of Python, it's time to practice this beautiful programming language with some projects. And in this part we are going to look at a simple and fun game in Python, that is snake water gun. And trust me guys, if you are a beginner then this is a great one to start with. Here is a quick demo of the game. The user will be prompted to pick from the three choices, and once a user enters his choice, the computer will pick his choice and then either he wins or lose. I hope you loved this demo. Now let's go ahead and implement this step by step. So let's get started. First we need to import the random module so that the computer can make its move randomly. Next we will define a function called winning, which will take in two arguments, the computer's move and the user move. The function will then determine the winner of the game. In the next step we will generate a random move for the computer. After that, we will ask the user to make their move and pass both moves to our winning function. We will then print out the results of the game. Now let's check the result, and for this, first of all, let's check if both the computer and player choice is same, then we will return none. Else if computer chooses snake and player chooses either water, he loses, and if gun, he wins. Again we will use else if statement because as I told you earlier that you can use as many elif statements as you can. So this time let's check for water and return appropriate results, and finally let's check if computer chooses gun. Now if winning function returns none, it means that the game has been tied. Else if it returns true, then the player would win, and else it would print that the player loses. So I hope it makes sense, and that's it. We have created a simple Python script for playing snake water gun. Let's run our program, and there you go. In conclusion, this game is a great way to practice your programming skills, especially when it comes to using the if statement and the random module. So that's it for this tutorial. Next we will be building another very similar project but with some advanced features. So let's jump right into it. This is the second project. It's about rock, paper and scissors. Here is the quick demo of the game. The user will be prompted to pick from the three choices, and once a user enters his choice, the computer will pick his choice and then either he wins or lose. And the user can also play the game again or simply quit the game. I hope you loved this demo. Now let's go ahead and implement this step by step. First we need to import the random module which we will be using later to generate the computer's choice. Next we need to define a tuple of options for the game, and these are rock, paper and scissors. After that let's create a running variable and set it equal to true at the start. Now the game starts with a while loop that continues until running is set to false. Within the loop, the player's choice should be initialized as none and the computer's choice should be selected randomly from the options using the random.choice function. Let's create another while loop that continues until the player enters a valid choice from the options. If the player's choice is not in the list of options, they are prompted to enter the same query again. The player's and computer's choices should be then printed to the screen. Then we need to create if statements to compare the player's and computer's choice and determine the outcome of the game. If the player and computer have the same choice, it's a tie. Else if the player's choice is rock and computer is scissors, then player wins. Else if the player chooses paper and computer chooses rock, then player wins. And finally if the player chooses scissors but the computer chooses paper, then also the player wins. Otherwise the player loses. So we have used elif statement to check who wins. and we are checking player input against computer for all these three options. And also we are displaying the message on the console, so we are near to end this game. So next we can write the code that asks the player if they want to play again. If the player enters anything other than y, the running variable is set to false. Otherwise, if he writes y, then he can play this game again. With just a few lines of code, we have created a functional rock paper scissors game. Let's test it out, and there you go, our game is working perfectly. So guys, if you enjoyed this Python course, then feel free to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. All the source code of this course is available in the description below. And guys, once again, thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next time.